Hirsh, full disclosure, I'm a paid advisor to Palantir, so I'm going to ask him the hardest questions. Hirsh, Palantir has worked with all the health agencies to aggregate data that previously was really hard to gather, to give a picture from above in a way you can visualize the environment that we're all in, and whether it's COVID, whether it's cancer incidences, whether it's pollution and cancer incidences mapped on each other. So number one, how do you find all of that data in a discombobulated, often very parochial data environment in the healthcare system? And secondly, knowing where we are is great, but how do you use it to know where we're going to go? And how does that affect your view of the future of healthcare?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it's worth maybe the brief origin story of Palantir here, which is the fundamental principles with which Palantir was started was that there's this age-old view that privacy and security need to be traded off with one another. And that, I think, particularly was in a national security context where, in a post 9/11 world, we really needed software to help bridge the gap and both protect the data of the citizens of the United States and also provide the infrastructure to help us get ahead of and address potential threats to the country. That ultimately resulted in us building a software platform that helps integrate data that organizations already have access to into one place, but critically locking that down, securing it, and providing the federal government with the tools to provide governance and auditability and interpretability on top of all of that information. The second half of that, which I think really gets to the second half of your question, is not just having information in one place so that we can create analytics and dashboards and run models, but actually really so that we can connect it to the decisions and the operations that an organization needs to run. And so that's, the epidemiologists every day at the CDC, the researchers at the NIH, the supply chain experts on the ground at a number of commercial distributors, really having data at their fingertips to make the decisions that they need every day. And I love what Commissioner Killif said before this, which is we need to get back to the point where clinicians are spending the majority of their time focused on providing care rather than munging data and filling out forms, and that's where software, technology, AI needs to go. And so when I think about the future of healthcare, where Palantir's role is in all of this, helping really provide a centralizing force across this incredibly fragmented ecosystem without pretending to have a silver bullet and accepting that all data is going to be in one place, really prioritizing security and control and auditability has always been important. And we've seen how much that resonates in healthcare, but it's becoming incredibly, even more and more important as we think about bringing AI into these contexts and ensuring that interpretability, model readiness and bias checking, all of that is part of the way that AI factors into the decisions we're making. And so very concretely, I think we've seen that approach be incredibly relevant during COVID, from disease surveillance and getting a comprehensive view of everything happening at CDC and nationwide, to providing research infrastructure that's really patient-centric and gives tools to researchers across the country and prioritizes EHR interoperability, to supply chain forecasting and identifying potential shortages. But all of that is about not just seeing that data and having a common operating picture, but tying it to the decisions that you can make, the places you can allocate resources, the places we need to we need to make sure there is stock and supply, the places and the tools that we need to empower researchers with to really drive the next round of cancer insights. And so I think that ethos of connecting data and analytics and now AI to decisions and its operational context is more relevant than ever, because working backwards from those decision points is the only way we're going to be able to make sense of this fragmented ecosystem.
So, we say you can't change what you can't measure, and Palantir is like the top of being able to measure things. How do people, in your experience, your customers, your agencies, how do they learn to act on data that they never had before? And how well are they doing at that?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, Greg, the majority of our engagements, so first of all, Palantir is not a data broker. We're not showing up at our engagements with various federal agencies, providing them data that they then have access to. I think what we have found is that at the majority of these agency partners and a number of our commercial partners, the data and a lot of the information is already there. And the ability to synthesize it and get it into one common format, location, and operational context, what we call the ontology, really provides unprecedented ability to make the decisions that are already being made just with a combination of PowerPoints and consultants and spreadsheets and dashboards, and really getting that built into software in a first-class way where the decisions operators are making every day is backed by the data the organization already has is really powerful and I think is doable. It's a matter of making use of what you already have rather than only prioritizing and discussing the things that you need to get access to.
What healthcare problem do you worry about the most, and what's the Palantir solution to that problem?
Great question. I think everything Judy said resonates. The fragmentation of the system is really scary and complex, and I think maybe the hardest part of that is it feels really intractable. A slightly different answer is that I think if we had wanted to author a playbook as a country for how to be like maybe a little bit tinfoil hat about how to like issue a bio threat against the United States, we couldn't have done a better job in the last 3.5 years. Our inability to collaborate, our inability to coordinate across all the different components of the private sector, the public sector, the payers, the providers, just getting our whole healthcare system into a single place where we could then respond effectively was very, very, very challenging. And so one of the things that concerns me is that healthcare is now a national security problem. I think that was made very clear, and I think there have been really tremendous and sort of laudable improvements in the way that the White House has launched, the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response. I think OSTP and the National Security Council are thinking about this more. But if we think about healthcare the way we think about national security, we need endpoint detection to know when potential biothreats are entering or exiting the country, particularly entering the country, which can take the form of wastewater surveillance. I think CDC is doing a lot of good work with the National Wastewater Surveillance System and the Traveler Genomic Sequencing Program. We need centralized infrastructure to be able to synthesize that information rapidly to drive potential action. And then I think we need a much more sophisticated doctrine on how the US partners with other countries to inform and respond to potential threats once they've entered our borders. And so I think a real doctrine of public health readiness and treating public health and our healthcare system as a national security problem is something I really believe is necessary. I think from a Palantir perspective, we fortunately have a lot of experience with national security and how to provide infrastructure that helps mitigate potential threats while really prioritizing privacy and security and appropriate audited handling of patient data or civilian data. And so I think that is something that I really want to see us continue to invest in, and that I think I would be really excited for Palantir to be a thought partner on shaping our approach to as a country.
Hirsh, as the youngest kid on this block, what gives you hope for the future of healthcare? Because you're going to experience more of it than the rest of us.
Thank you, Greg. I certainly hope that is the case. Look, I think what Jared said resonates. The role of the private sector in interacting with the public sector, I think we've seen a material shift in the last 3.5 years in how our public institutions embrace private sector innovation, bring it to the door. I think things like ARPA-H to the supply chain control tower at ASPR are demonstrations of where private sector innovation and partnership is really being brought into federal decision-making. And I continue to believe that there is a role that the federal government uniquely can play in driving healthcare innovation. And so seeing that really meaningfully change, I hope we continue the sort of acceleration of the way private sector innovation is brought into our day-to-day. And I think the advent of generative AI in the last 6 months provides even more opportunity for us to accelerate that. But I'm really excited about the way that that's progressed.